Shalom, family. Thank you so much for joining us today as we do this week's news report and news review. And it's always a blessing to sit with all of you and get together with all of you. It is a joy and a delight. Amen and amen. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Always a pleasure to see all of you. Thankful to all of you where you're over here on the chat. There you go. Uh, so thankful for every one of you. Please share, please like. I see a significant number of people that are joining in with us, and it's always nice to see these new faces and new people that are popping in. The remnant continue to grow by the day, and that is exciting to watch, exciting for us as the household of faith, exciting for all of those who have been praying for you. Some of you who are just waking up in the last, few years, you don't even understand how much prayer and how much, um, just fasting, praying, interceding, crying out. And to see this awakening, to see all of you awakening is just either side of this is whether you're one of those that are watching the awakening or being awakened. Either way, it's a delightful time. It's wonderful. On the good side of that, we're awake. On the sad side or the hard side, they've been naughty while we were snoozing. Let me tell you, we're waking up to a lot of lies, a lot of things that unfortunately affect our world. And as the light continues to dawn, as the day star rises, as more light shines with the brightness of the King's coming, unfortunately, for those who operate in darkness and in wickedness and in evil, deceit, right? Or what the scripture calls cunning craftiness, their day is not, this is not a good day for them. Because you see, they can't abide the light. They can't abide the exposure that comes from all of these lights that are on. And, I was meditating on this just because some of the stories you get to see now and the things, some good, but mostly very bad things that you see in human behavior. And those of you that have spend any time on any social media platforms know exactly what I'm talking about. You're going to see video and commentary on things that you never thought you'd see. But on the other side of this, and this is the part that I think we all are benefiting from, is, there's nothing better than letting an enemy sort of defeat themselves or sort of destroy themselves. And one of the things that we see in the scripture is that I believe it was King Hezekiah, where he just began to worship Yahuwah, and he gave him the victory over the enemy. Our adversary will destroy himself. He will self-destruct. I want you to think about the first son of perdition. How did he die? Self-destruction. Okay, and so our adversaries are self-destructing right in front of us, because abiding in the light is not something they can do. You got to remember, their deeds are dark. Everything they did was built on darkness. They never thought it would end. They thought it would always be this way. And now that the light is shining, the great light of the glorious gospel of the kingdom of Yahuwah, our Elohim, is shining bright, it is causing massive levels of disturbance in their world. And those that are awake to the spiritual warfare dynamics, that's the element that we cover in this broadcast each week. I mean, anybody and everybody can read you the news, all kinds of different broadcasts out there that discuss the news. And one of the things that we were hearing from many of our members and friends, many of you that are here with us tonight, was that, you checked out of the news and checked out of even keeping an eye on current events, because you could smell the propaganda 5 miles away. the manipulation, the witchcraft that essentially was being used against you to manipulate you, to put you in an emotional state. And so you just checked out. And that's obviously because of your awakened level, the level of your awakenedness, if you will. Because the more awake you are, the more attuned to spiritual warfare you are, the less interested you are in the devil's propaganda, So kudos to you, but we still at the same time have to keep an eye out on what is happening in the earth. So doing this broadcast allows us to sit together for a bit of a summary, and without being overwhelmed. Because if you're a news junkie, if you're one of those people that is sitting on the edge of your chair every day and you've got 20 different feeds that you're constantly watching, and you have 8 cups of coffee, okay, you're gonna look a little scary to the neighbors. And just saying, so uh, and so it's gonna be hard for a lot of folks to identify with that, and it's hard for us to keep track of all the details that are now coming at us. So our adversary built these systems, or I feel like mankind in his flesh built some of these systems with one intention, and they have been taken over. Take, for example, this new medium that we now have available to us has been taken over by the light that is now shining in dark places. Not all of them are aligned necessarily with the king in directly, but they're still doing their job. So it may not necessarily be the same crowd that we hang with, but they're doing the job of exposing the deeds of darkness. This is what's causing the backlash. So it's the finding of these hidden stash houses and money launderings and backroom deals. It's the exposure of all these things that is causing the ripple effect that you're seeing in your world. All of which was predicted, all of which was uh, foretold. And we were all warned. If you were listening, if you had ears to hear, you were warned about these very things, but we didn't know how they would play out. So isn't this kind of exciting to watch? To some degree, I mean, there's a lot of morbidity to that, but in some regards, it's exciting to watch the fulfillment of Scripture. On the downside of that, uh, unfortunately, that means we get to live out Psalm 91. And what he says is, with your eyes, you will behold the recompense of the wicked. So, what are we seeing? We're seeing loss of life to our left and to our right. And that makes this much more difficult to traverse, more difficult road to walk. And that makes us much more somber and sober and humble, and brings us to tears as we see the suffering going on. But we also know that at the end of all of this comes the glorious kingdom, the glorious new kingdom. And we know that he causes his people to beat their swords into plowshares. So if you ain't got farming on your mind yet, you might want to get farming on your mind. Okay. Because if he's going to beat swords into plowshares, he's hinting at the direction he's going. Amen. He's hinting at what he wants us to spend our energy now in doing. Instead of spending trillions of dollars, and I'm talking aggregately as a society or as the earth, instead of investing in war and machinations of war and forcing our will, one people group on another people group, why don't we instead invest that time in finding more efficient agricultural techniques and beating our swords into plowshares. Imagine how much food we could create. We got a lot of open land. Just saying. Whole lot of open land for people to be talking about being crowded. Y'all might want to spread out. Just saying. I know that might be too much common sense, but y'all might want to spread out. Uh, there's a little bit of congestion going on. And how many know? I love to play in the dirt. That's right. Hey, how many know that everybody in Turkey that is, and everybody watching that is watching the utter failure of dense population? And we talked about that last week. In fact, we're going to hit that very early in our discussion today. All right, so let's hit some of the news. And again, Saints, I want to encourage all of you who are newsies, if you will. You're always welcome to send me stories. My sister Octavia is quite prolific about that. So anyway, let's take a quick look here. And again, just a reminder to everybody, these stories are available usually, unless I accidentally miss one, but usually anything we mention is available right here on remnantwatch.com. And we put these stories here just to make it easy for you to scan headlines, stay up to date without having to feel overwhelmed by the amount of information that is coming out. So we're trying to work with that at the same time, keep you informed as Bible prophecy is being fulfilled in front of us. And here as our top story, you see a story that we'll click to here in a second, the timeline that Putin is expected to launch what is considered unstoppable nuclear, and they're actually called, can you believe this, Satan II missiles. That's what they call these missiles. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. Folks, this is the world in which we find ourselves. It's like they don't even hide. Everything is in your face. There's some stories I won't even cover. I'm not even going to discuss, but you've all seen them if you've been on social media with the Emmys and the devil, right? I'm not going to glorify that, but just, they're not hiding. If you want to know who they are, you'll know. And if you don't want to know, you won't want to know. You can close your eyes. But, we are those children of light whose eyes are open, who are not deceived, and these things will not come upon us unawares. Okay, so I'm bringing this up only because it's got predictions in it. I'm not making these predictions, but this is what this article was stating. Exact dates of Vladimir Putin is expected to launch, and they're expecting it sometime in this current month, either the 15th or the 25th of this current month. Vladimir Putin is poised to spook the West with an imminent major new test launch of his giant 208-ton hypersonic Satan II Apocalypse missile capable of carrying nuclear warheads. The firing may even be timed to coincide with the anniversary of the start of the war in Ukraine on February 24th. Officials in remote districts of Kamchatka have been warned to be ready for a test launch of a nuclear-capable strategic missile between February 15th and the 25th. So, what are the odds that this is an innocent launch of a test of in case maybe sometime in the future, should Russia find themselves in some conflict, maybe perhaps, I don't know, they might need this technology. So they're going to test just in case. Folks, they're already in a conflict, right? And so we don't know what this means. And this is why we have to stay alert. Again, dense population centers. There's a reason why the king said, "Come out of her, my people." And if you have ears to hear, if you go out there and just type in "come out of her, my people," you're going to have so many search results come back, because it is being said from every corner of the body of Messiah, get out of there. Okay, get out of there. And I want you to think about these cities in southern Turkey um, before this occurred, before this disaster occurred. I want you to think about that. If you were in southern Turkey before this occurs and you get a word, right? You get a word, and the word is, and I bet you there are people, saints, I bet you we're going to hear stories of people that were told by the Ruach to leave, right? And then now this is what they avoided. And this is why you've got to be willing to go wherever he tells you to go and depart. A lot of people died as a result of not being aware of just how precarious their situation is. Take a look at this, folks. The Turkey's death toll. I remember last time we talked about this last week, it was about 4,000. And I told you that I believed, and it's just based on what I had seen, that it would exceed at least 10,000. And now we can confirm that the death toll has already surpassed 33,000. And I suspect now we'll see it even go further. So aid is now rushing into Turkey since twin earthquakes devastated vast swaths of the country. But anger is growing in destroyed towns over a sputtering government response and allegedly shoddy construction that has led to dozens of arrests of contractors. The death toll across Turkey and Syria has reached over 33,000, with 29,600 dead in Turkey and another 3,500 dead in Syria. And across the huge earthquake zone in Turkey and Syria, millions are homeless, sleeping in tents, cars, or in mosques that have become makeshift shelters, creating a massive logistical challenge for Turkish government agencies and international donors, and sparking growing anger among victims still awaiting help. It's been chaos. Disaster management expert and former official at Islamic Relief Worldwide, a UK-based non-governmental aid organization, said, "You see it always. The aid comes and then it stops, partly because of logistics, but partly because the government has been overwhelmed and the international response has been lacking. The cargo planes carry rescue teams and humanitarian aid for Turkey's earthquake victims, land around the clock, disgorging their loads, and then quickly flying out to make room for the next heavy-laden aircraft." And I can't even imagine what it must be like to try to bring aid to millions of people. And this is just one region, all right? And now we were told, hey, there's our sister Octavia. We were told that that according to Matthew 24, that there would be earthquakes in diverse places. So if this is the foretelling of the things to come, then we can expect other high population centers to experience the same results. And just because it didn't happen in your particular neighborhood doesn't mean that we shouldn't be, one, praying for all the victims, and two, being listening attentively in this time period to the Ruach, if where we are is in a potential, because I'm sure these people did not suspect that there was any danger being where they are. And it was only after the fact. In fact, many of those who died as a result of this earthquake died from simply staying inside a building that they didn't know was going to collapse. So the building looked fine until it wasn't. It maybe had a few cracks or whatever, but this happened early in the morning. And so people were simply just inside their units and inside their apartments or inside their condominium. Most of these buildings that collapsed that caused so much damage were multi-story buildings that now apparently, according to reports, the and I was talking to Mama about this today. I said some of these, they really shouldn't have fallen quite like the way they did. So that may have exposed the way that they were constructed. Because by contrast, um, we have other structures that have endured for centuries. On the other hand, there was a castle that also that had stood for centuries that fell apart. So maybe it wouldn't have mattered what they made it of. If it shook a castle that's been there for hundreds or thousands of years and it fell down, then that may have just been one of those kinds of events. But that does tell us the power of earthquakes. Okay. And I want you to think about this. This is a part of Turkey, you and I, we don't even think about. Let's be honest, we didn't even know this part of the world even existed. We certainly didn't know millions of people were living there, right? I mean, we sort of generally know, but we weren't really in touch with it. Now you see pictures of this. Now you see the effects, and it brings it home, because those buildings don't look a whole lot different than the ones that you and I may have driven by or grown up near or what have you. And you start realizing that everybody in these traps have been set up, and they didn't even know it. In good times, in non-birth pang times, maybe they're fine. But during the birth pangs of the coming kingdom, Babylon's not a good place to hang out. I'm just saying. Just saying. I'm just saying what I'm saying. I said it. Octavia, I said it out loud. I said a quiet part out loud. Babylon, probably not a good place to be hanging out right now. Just letting you know. Okay. Excuse me. Last week we talked a lot about the financial world and how that's dramatically changing. And I don't know if I pointed this out. This had been published, but I don't know if I necessarily pointed this particular story out last week when we talked. But they are preparing for, and in fact, the United States has already defaulted. I believe it missed the January 31st deadline from my information, and that they are preparing for a total turnover, which, beware the Ides of March, right, is a common term. Congress is once again bickering about raising the debt ceiling, the amount of money the U.S. government can borrow to pay its bills on time. And that means corporate America has to be ready for the worst. The CEO of Bank of America, America's second largest bank, and one of the owners of the Fed, just thought I'd throw that in there, told CNN he hopes lawmakers resolve their issues because the market and economy love stability, yet defaulting on the country's debt remains a possibility that cannot be ignored. We have to be prepared for that, not only in this country, but in other countries around the world. Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan told Poppy Hollow on CNN this morning, "You hope it doesn't happen, but hope is not a strategy, so you prepare for it." This is soft selling you and soft telling you what is on its way. And so I believe that they have been planning for they've been trying to soften the blow. But in 2016, I did a news broadcast, and I told you then, this was right as the election was occurring, and I got it very strong in my spirit that, one, the light was going to continue to increase, so it didn't matter who got elected to what. None of that was going to matter. And regardless of whose party did what, didn't make any difference. The systems in front of you would be collapsing. And so, in fact, in the graphic I used behind me during that video, gosh, that goes back, that's 2016. But I remember this vividly. It was a building coming down, a controlled demolition. And I called it that. I called it a controlled demolition. Well, now you're going to have a lot of commentators use that nomenclature and describe it accordingly. And I believe correctly. I believe you're watching a controlled demolition. I believe you're watching the effect of the Jubilee. I believe you're watching the effect of pressing your case in the court of heaven. This is why you pray. This is why you take the battle to another level. You don't fight in the flesh. I mean, there's people that got to carry things out in the natural. We get that. We support that. We're thankful for the soldiers on the ground, the frontline warriors, the lawyers, the honest, righteous law enforcement, the honest, righteous military. We're grateful for those people. I mean, they are the hands. They are the executioners. They are the ones that go grab the bad guys, right? They are, we need good guys everywhere. But let's face it, without wind, that boat goes nowhere. Okay? It's like having sails with no wind. That boat's going to sit in the harbor. We have to pray. We've got to cry out. And when the remnant began to cry out, what did he say? He said, if my people who are called by my name. You see that? So he has to restore his name so you can call upon his name, because then you call upon his name. Guess what happens? The world changes. Woo! And boy, they're not ready for that. He said, if my people are called by my name, will what? Humble themselves and pray. He didn't say protest. He didn't say do all these other things. He said, humble themselves and pray, seek my face, and turn from their own wicked ways, the ways they twisted, ways they made up, things that they concocted, things that they invented, things that they decided. They will do that. He would hear from heaven, forgive the sin, and heal the land. So, as the saints do this, as even a remnant, as even a small number, tiny number actually execute and do this thing, okay? What does he do? He starts responding. Now, who does he respond for? His elect's sake, which we're told again in Matthew 24, which is why we're looking at this, because isn't it interesting how some people are having a horrible time while other people he's blessing? So isn't that a little like, kind of like he did during the time in the deliverance from Egypt, where the Egyptians were experiencing judgments while the children of Israel were protected in the land of Goshen. Don't you all feel a little bit like you're in a little bit of Goshen wherever you are? Don't you feel like no matter where you are, no matter how close to the flame you are, that you're in this little protected bubble because he that is in you is greater than he that is in the world, right? And so you feel this safety, yet you know you're right near danger. That's because we haven't fully departed this thing yet. We're still awakening, realizing, whoa, where are we? What did we let happen? What have we allowed? Well, how many legislatures, how many law enforcement, how many different are waking up realizing we might have given away too much authority, whether it's giving it away federally, giving it away to any state of any kind. Again, this should never separate you from your sovereignty. There's no state created by sovereigns which should at any point gain the power to remove the sovereignty from the sovereigns from which it derived its authority. Just think that through. It's a bit of a circle jerk. And yet we're seeing that. So people are waking up. They're realizing that they are the sovereigns who empowered the beast, right? So if the sovereigns wake up and say, we remove this power, then the animal has no more power to continue. We are the ones that have empowered these things. And as we awaken, we realize we got to do something about it. And waiting for a super politician to come along and do it is not going to work. It's going to have to be a grassroots citizen effort in every corner of the earth where people say, thanks for playing, but no thank you. We don't want to trade our sovereignty for your bowl of porridge. Amen. And I want to tell you that even nations are coming to grips with this reality. China is replacing its U.S. Treasury holdings with gold. And so what is it doing? It is quietly and consistently transferring wealth into physical assets. China is accelerating its selling of United States Treasury securities. And it's just continuously selling these securities since 2008. the communist nation has been one of the largest foreign holders of U.S. treasuries. It started selling off its treasury slowly in 2018, right around the same time when the country started buying more gold. And the reason for the accelerated sell off has not been disclosed. But I think we can figure it out if we put two and two together, right, folks? We can figure out that there's a change happening to the global financial management. People are no longer interested in trading with hocus pocus fiat money. I mean, I think people are still used to and still conditioned for. There's a huge backlash against going cashless. So whoever still provides cash, some type of instrument like cash, going to own the market. So it would be foolish for any, again, these authoritative systems only work when they have absolute control. And that's not achievable because, again, the king always will make a way of escape. And never before in the history of Earth has the light been on in every nation at the same time. So not a good day to be a bad guy, not a good day to be a worker for the bad guys. They're going straight to hell. And people are waking up. Their bribery isn't quite working anymore. It's kind of like, remember on the Titanic when the guy had given the one porter money, and finally the porter got upset with him and just threw the money right back in his face because he realized, I'm going to die here. What good is this money going to do me? Okay, what good is a suitcase full of $100 bills if I'll never get to spend it? Exactly. And they're getting the Judas realization that they betrayed their fellow man. They betrayed their humanity. They betrayed mankind, I should say. And many of them are seeking death, and they can't find it. It's a very sad scenario. And so, again, we're seeing economic challenges that are beginning to really affect the earth. And if you think that is something that's going to affect other people, look, this is down at the bottom of the rung right here. This is one way to deal with the food shortage issue. They've been giving away food stamps like it was candy. And I know several people personally that had gotten quite a bit in food stamp money, EBT benefits. Well, guess what? They set them up. And now they're fitting to take them away. Watch this. Hunger cliff looms as 32 states are set to slash food stamp benefits. Thank you again, my sister Octavia, for sending up awesome articles and helping us stay on top of things. Yeah, I sent you a link to join me if you wanted to join me if you were up for it, but that's okay. It was short notice. The hunger cliff is looming for millions of Americans, with 32 states set to slash food stamp benefits beginning in March. The cuts will impact more than 30 million people. Did I just read that right? The cuts will impact more than 30 million people who are enrolled in the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, or SNAP, in those states, according to data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Among the states where recipients are facing cuts are California and Texas, which have the greatest number of people on SNAP at 5.1 million and 3.6 million recipients, respectively. The reductions are due to the end of so-called emergency allotments, which bolstered food stamp benefits at the start of the pandemic as Americans grappled with the massive disruption to the economy. While the U.S. is certainly on more stable footing than in 2020, households are now struggling with high food costs. So, I don't know if you guys understand what is happening here, but one of the things that was going on in our stores is if you have SNAP EBT benefits, right? So you have, I don't know, $1,500 on a SNAP card. That's real money. That's buy, whatever you want in the Walmart grocery store, or, whatever grocery store you're fond of or they're fond of, right? And they get to buy just like anybody that had to work hard for their for their $1,500. Okay, it's the same buying power. So what did that do to supplies on the shelves? Well, if you give artificial money, if you will, to 30, was it 30 million? Did that say 30 million people? Okay. 30, that's utter failure of a so-called successful nation, by the way. Utter failure. They ought to be embarrassed that they have that many people in this prosperous nation that need that kind of assistance. So this tells you that their remediation and their programs to fix these kinds of problems are not working. But I digress. So 30 million people that were using government money to buy groceries. Okay, watch this now. Who are suddenly going to be told, buy your own groceries. Okay, go ahead out there and get your own groceries. What's that going to do? Well, the good news of that is if you don't work, you don't eat, right? That's what the scripture says. So a whole lot of people are going to suddenly go find work. So that's a good thing in a lot of ways. Those benefits decreasing will force change in behavior and patterns and what have you. But what it also will do is, yes, and there is a lot of fraud. There's absolutely tons of fraud. Absolutely, my sister, you're absolutely correct. But what it will also do is reduce the competition for food. So suddenly, the families that were going and spending enormous amounts of money because they had those benefits and were able to sort of stock up using that will not have that liquidity anymore. And so that is going to change availability of food, but it's also going to mean that the people that are on the bottom rung of the economic ladder, if you will, are going to be suffering because once, as creatures of habit, they became accustomed to having that support, and now having that support removed from them, you know full well that the weakest among us are the ones that are most likely to suffer. And so, once again, a point of prayer for all the saints to be praying for there to be a major change in terms of ministering to the needs of people that need to transition away from government benefit as a means of survival and move into a performance based economy and a performance based employment that will reward improvement and reward excellence, if you will. I believe that that is the answer for many of these 30 million people. Now, again, some people are disabled. Some people have extenuating circumstances that do, in fact, prohibit work. We certainly have to be, as a nation, compassionate to those that are in need. And I do encourage us to always be that kind of a country. But at the same time, we have to encourage industry. We've got to encourage entrepreneurship. We have to encourage good work ethic. We don't want to encourage people to do nothing and still eat very well, right? So I think that there's some common sense has probably prevailed. And if they're going to try to get this economy turned around, they're going to need more people working, not sitting. And I mean, some of the amounts of money that they were giving individually was a lot of money that they were giving to families. I heard some of the figures and I was like, wow. I could not believe the amount of money that was being given individual, to a family of 3 or 4, what have you. And I mean, wonderful for the children. It's great for food. It's great for those reasons. On the other hand, is it really helping? We've all seen this before, and we all have seen that the long-term effects are not good. So a short-term intervention is good. Long-term creates a welfare state which has proven through the centuries to stymie growth and actually reverse progress gained by previous generations. I'm pretty certain there's a few gray hairs out there that will amen that statement. Okay. Yeah, you're still welcome to join me. I'm glad you saw my email. All right. I still got a lot to cover here. But there are several things that we're seeing now. Again, they're distracting us. This is one of the things that I'm really grateful for being able to do these broadcasts for, because when this stuff starts happening, I can kind of say, you know what? This is distraction central. All right. Whenever you start seeing things like this, start asking the question, what don't you want us to know you're up to? Right. Another flying object has just been shot down over Canada, but we're not told what they are. So you want to keep us on the edge of our chair? You want to create some suspense? Americans have been trained for suspense. We can't wait till next week's episode, that kind of thing. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Saturday said Saturday that on his order, a U.S. warplane shot down an unidentified object that was flying high over northern Canada, acting a day after U.S. planes took a similar action over Alaska. Shortly before Trudeau's tweet, the North American Aerospace Defense Command said that it detected an object flying at high altitude over Canada. NORAD gave no further information, including when the object was first spotted and what it is. So they don't want to tell you what it is, and I thought that was kind of interesting. They want to distract you, right? Hey, Alan, this is funny. So they want to distract you with all this stuff, but they don't want to tell you what it is. So I'm going to surprise everybody. Hey, everybody, we're going to add our surprise guest to the stream. Octavia Martinez is going to join us. What do you think about this? They want to tell us about this thing in the sky, but they don't want to tell us what it is when they've shot it down.
Oh my gosh. They're just making a story out of nothing. My dad and I have been laughing about this all week. This ridiculous balloon. It kind of reminds me of that Balloon Boy story from like 10 years ago. Do you remember that? 15 years ago.
I know this is laughable stuff, but we got the world sidetracked away from more important things right now, and we got too much classified information being found in different places. And,
oh my god!
And too many reports are being filed, like the ones you've been sending me, that are exposing some real issues that are going on.
Yeah, I saw that food stamps thing. That was very interesting because so many people had been relying upon that for so long. And, it's amazing. I had just sent that to a relative who they're no longer needing that. They're finally in a place where they're actually able to be providing for themselves. And I just said, praise Yahuwah, you guys don't have need for this because look, they set these people up.
They totally set them up. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. Great insight, and thank you for sending me. I'm not sure if you sent it to me and I put it on Remnant Watch, or if I had it and then you confirmed it.
I think I sent it to the bot, so whatever.
Good catch either way. But I completely agree with you. I feel like they set them up. They got people, like they made it easy. And by the way, this should tell everybody the way they think.
Yeah.
Come on over here. It's like what was that story? Hansel and Gretel. With the gingerbread house.
Yeah. The candy house.
Yeah, the candy house. Come on in. No, what can go wrong?
Yeah.
That's what the CBDC is. It's their candy. Their digital candy. They want to give everybody digital candy. No, that was a good catch. I appreciate you sending that up. Because I think you're absolutely right, and I think that they're using these levers. Yeah. Don't you think that they are basically? I mean, we use this term a lot, but it fits. They are gaslighting.
Yes.
Especially the poor and the underinformed.
Yes, I completely agree, 100%.
To the point where they don't know what to believe.
Right.
And who to believe at this point.
Right. And so they're just getting frustrated and they're finding themselves in a tizzy and they're getting angry. And you're seeing people getting fights at stores, like they're fighting over cartons of eggs and just crazy things because they got people locked in this prison mentally thinking that they need these places, that they need these stores, that they need their system. And they don't. It's
a battlefield of the mind, isn't it?
Right.
It really is a battlefield of the mind. And I totally agree. I believe that one of the things that we've been watching is a slow systemic sort of, and it puts you in a Stockholm syndrome sort of state. Yeah. But this sort of, what do they call that when they've, shell shocked, when you've been bombed so much where you don't even react to the bombing anymore.
Right.
You don't even react to these things the way that you normally would. I'll give you an example. Stay with me on this. Watch this. So I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to this or not, but there have been two Republicans assassinated
Wow.
in very recent, in the last few weeks.
I did
A
not see
local
this.
New Jersey councilman member, Russell Heller, was shot dead in his car exactly 1 week. Watch this now. Exactly 1 week after the slaying of Sayreville Councilwoman Eunice Dwumfor, according to reports. Authorities responded to calls that a person had been shot at the PSE&G facility in Franklin Township just after 7 a.m.
Wow.
And Heller, 51, was found shot dead outside his car, according to the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office. So, yeah, it's getting wild out there. We've got, I believe that the light level is getting so, it's creating a desperation. It's creating a sort of hyper reaction.
Yes.
Especially among the busted. You know, they're busted, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how else to call him. Like, dude knows he's busted, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't know what to do.
I mean, I don't know if you caught the sidetrack, speaking of people busted, but I saw clips of the State of the Union address. I mean, it's like, I don't know if you remember that movie Idiocracy from like 20 years ago, but these people are.
Why did you bring that up? Oh my goodness.
Standing ovations, the guys.
Idiocracy. If you guys have not seen this movie, Idiocracy, you really need to see it. Because if nothing else, it'll give you an insight of just how
it was pretty
how stupid the world could get, actually.
Like, but slurring his speech, and he's not even saying actual words, and they're just standing up applauding him, and I'm like, is this for real? Like, this is what we live now? Yeah, it was amazing.
It's utterly beyond crazy. And you know what it reminds me of, which is kind of an interesting parallel in my mind. And I'm sure my brain is a strange neighborhood. But anyhow, it reminds me of the time period described by Josephus right before the Romans came in and destroyed Jerusalem. He describes this time period that was so comically ridiculous.
Yeah. That's what we're living
so utterly ridiculous. The way that I think that they had taken, if I remember correctly, and again, anybody out there correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, they took lots to appoint the high priest and ended up electing some farmer who they had to go out and grab to make him high priest. They had made such a mockery, is my point, of the official the beauty that was the temple and all of that. They made such a mockery of it that's the jokery they'd gotten to.
Yeah.
And so here we are.
Same thing.
You're seeing like everything that we once that any society considered to be sacred, not just ours, but like all things sacred are now thrown in the garbage. Like anything that was even remotely sacrosanct, anything that was like a new, like the rule, like you just don't do this, all that's out the window now.
Right.
And so, but I do feel like it all was a setup. I'll show you another setup. Watch this. And I mean, we are, well, we're not personally experiencing this, but we're in this region. So they set up a bunch of people here.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've read stories, Octavia, that go back to the 70s where they were warning Southern California, and all through the 80s, especially it became like a thump in the 90s and 2000s where they were like, you're building too many houses, you're letting too many people, move in. Look at this. The dying of the West, Lake Mead and Lake Powell may not refill in our lifetimes.
Wow.
That's how depleted these resources are. And these are the resources upon which they executed all of these building permits and allowed all these homes and allowed all this development. And so we read about a few weeks ago. I don't
The
know
one
if
in
you
Arizona.
remember.
Yep.
Yeah, you
Near
remember that
Scottsdale.
community
Yeah.
near Scottsdale, which is,
Unbelievable.
because
Yeah.
Arizona, that is, you don't mess with Scottsdale in terms
Yeah.
of, it's a wealthy area. They cut them right off.
Wow. And I
So,
saw someone. He was talking. This is not somebody who's grafted in, but they're noticing. And he said, it's interesting. California just had all this rain, and they didn't capture any of it. They just let it all drain right into the ocean. It's like almost like they're
mhm.
wanting to keep this drought going.
No,
He made that quick.
you put stupid in charge, and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how much money you throw.
Yeah.
You can put incompetent people in charge of anything. They can be in charge of the best restaurant in town, and within a certain amount of time, it will become the worst place in town. Because the management, they don't have the management heart. I believe that we were watching evidence of treason. So what's treason? Basically betraying your commitment, your covenant, your partner, your vow. They have completely committed treason by virtue of the favor that they show to anything other than the citizenry of the area or the region or the
Right.
place's state or county. And so this backlash is massive. And I'm talking massive backlash at this point. In fact, I'm going to bring up, I wasn't going to share this, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. There was one article that I had seen that were talking about France. And did you see that France had kind of lit up in uh, uh, new renewed protests
Yeah, I saw
because
that. Yeah.
they're going after their pensions.
Wow.
Well, they got the same problem we have here in the
Right.
United States. They got people coming for their benefits, and you know they don't have those benefits. Those benefits are they spent those in Ukraine.
Exactly.
Right? So yeah, this is going on in France right now. Take a look at this. And so the streets are empty. I mean, the homes are emptying out. People are in the street.
Wow.
Just gonna quickly play this as backdrop. People are in the street, folks.
This is
They're
how it looked a couple years
protesting.
ago there. Same thing, those yellow vest protests.
The
It's like
yellow vests, right?
insane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're having a similar experience now, but not just in this place, not just here, but everywhere. I'm talking. I'm going to show you. This will blow your mind. Where you see this is. Hold on a second. Let me pull this up. Because this is going on. The pushback is happening,
Oh, praise
and
him
little
to him.
by
That's
little,
amazing.
as you see this draw in right down here, you're going to be able to see it if you're paying attention on the screen. I was like, what is it? What state is this in? And then as it drew closer, I began to see that these were words in Hebrew.
Wow.
And this protest was going on in Israel. Look at that. That's in
That's
Hebrew.
amazing.
And so that's when I realized, oh, wow, this is going on. This is the one in Israel. So all of the wicked sort of mafiosos that have been running the world are getting exposed big time. And this is no longer, that's why I said this, is that we've never been in a state where the lights are coming on all at the same time. And so this is where we have to change our thinking, because and you and I and our group privately, we talk about this all the time, because this is our reality. We're grasping this reality,
Right.
that expecting big farm. Right here, we see many Americans farmers have shut down operations due to inflation. It's not just inflation, folks. They are literally being paid not to grow food.
And to dump
They're
milk,
being
you're seeing that
and to
again. That's been
dump
happening the
milk
last few
again.
years.
That's
Yep.
another thing that we've
Mm-hmm.
seen. Another, I'm not going to read this, but you can find this on Remnant Watch. But you're seeing this trend, right? So they're
Right.
going away from the aggregate farm. I think this is great news. What do you think?
So I think it's interesting. I think it's great news for those who are paying attention and they're watching. And I think it's going to sort of light the fire under people to get people to kind of move and to act. Because when you start to see the system is failing by design, people
Right.
are basically kind of have to come to a choice. Like they're either going
You have no choice.
to, right, they're either going to get up and move or they're going to just sit there and watch it collapse around them. And so people are going to be left without a choice to actually put 2 feet in front of each other and start walking or just allow themselves to be swept away by the collapse.
Well, and I do believe that common sense is slowly starting to kick in,
Right.
and people are slowly starting to go. You know what? I mean, it may not be tomorrow. It might not be that there's nothing there tomorrow, but there's coming a day when the systems that we've relied on for our literal survival, our literal day to day survival, may not be there. And in
Right.
fact, there's good possibilities that we're headed towards severe supply chain interruptions. What are we now going to do? And then they realize that even their efforts to disconnect are being sabotaged with their bird feed, with their
Oh, I
chicken
know.
feed.
They're trying, but there's always a way out to think outside of the box. And what's amazing is you're seeing more people who are using YouTube and other things to educate people. Here's how you think outside of their system. I don't know if you had seen that report about how it was Purina. They have a stake in Eggland's Best. So Purina's the one selling the chicken feed under different brand names to Tractor Supply. So don't you
Right.
find that interesting that the month that
Yes.
Eggland's Best opened up a brand new hen house, that's the month
Mm-hmm.
that people started noticing their chickens weren't laying as many eggs when they were buying this feed from Purina, which has a stake in Eggland's Best. So, I mean, you can't deny it. And I'll tell you, I think there's some truth to this because we have quail. Our quail should be laying. They're not laying right now. And where are we getting
Uh
our
oh.
feed from?
Mm-mm.
See? There you go.
No, and we got the heads up from our remnant house East Coast, and we were actually told, and it wasn't because our eggs or our hens weren't laying, but just to improve productivity. And so we
Right.
were already in discussions about feeds and things. We're kind of, without knowing any of the scandal, we were already kind of over the target, if you will.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, it was a good thing we were because we count on that. You know
Right.
that
Yeah.
here, for those that don't know, here at Remnant House or New Kingdom here down in southern Arizona, we have several people here with us on property, helping us with maintenance, with a number of different tasks, just to keep to upkeep the place and what have you. And so, food is a very important commodity. And so to have, our daily egg supply, we need every egg. you know,
Exactly.
like,
And we're just
I
getting to
need
the
my
point where
eggs.
our hens aren't laying yet. They're just about to get to that age. So this news came out right on time. So we won't even have
Right,
to go down that road. We've now
right.
got the alternative methods that we can try. But yeah, Yahuwah, he gives his people a warning in advance, which is wonderful.
It is, and again, whether you do this individually, and I do caution people to try to continue to make shift. I don't think that it's wise to, in my personal opinion, I believe that you need to pray about whether or not you're in the right place and you're safe there to sort of dig in, or if he's going to have you go somewhere else. Because I see a lot of consolidation coming in the future, very short term future. I see people um, giving up some of that independence to reassemble in different forms of community. So not completely eliminating that, but restructuring because survival will demand it. And so I caution people to run too quick down some of these roads. This is a time for fasting and praying. I know
Amen.
you guys had a lot of leading as you're taking each step and confirmations. This is what everybody needs. And to get to places where he has designated it, he set it apart
He throws
so that
people in
it's
the
a,
deep end. Big
you
time.
know, and there it is.
We're totally
Here
in
we
the
are
deep
in the
end.
deep end.
Yes.
Somebody said they don't want to be left behind. I'm like, too late. You
Right.
already been left behind.
You want to
Okay.
be. It's a blessing. What does it say in Second Esdras? It's like woe more to those who are not left behind. So we count it joy.
We count it joy. What about this? Have you heard about this GPT?
Yes. I've been laughing because people are trying to use that to like try to pass law exams and take the bar exam, and it's just it's nightmarish and disastrous. It doesn't surprise me though.
No, but they're taking it another step further. So, Natural News had this story. This is bone chilling, but I had seen several
That's
reports on it
disturbing. Necromancy
that
right there.
yeah, they're trying to. People are using this, folks, to talk to the dead. So how is that any different than a Ouija
It's
board?
not. It's I just thought about that's the same thing.
That's exactly the same thing. So that's
Yeah.
basically turning that into divination, one of
Yep.
the demonic
Wicked.
doorways. Okay. And so you guys can find this story again. It's on Remnant Watch, but this Chat GPT has changed already, and it's just now sort of making the news, if you will, or getting out there. But it's already a game changer because this AI is changing the way humans interact, and human beings are lazy by default. So if you make something super easy for them, they'll take that without realizing what they're doing over the course of a long period of time. They're not looking down that road 10, 20, 30 years. They're just thinking about right now. But it won't be long before what percentage of our news is created by this? What percentage
And how do we know it's not
of
already?
all of thank you.
Right. I mean, they all read from the same script, so there's got to be some sort of AI involved anyway.
This is why we love the courageous, because we say the quiet part out loud. Okay. How do we know that we are not watching an AI scripted, complete, earth-wide movie,
Exactly.
custom dropping, just like they customize your ads,
Right.
right? So that all I had to say was chocolate cake in front of my computer enough times to where finally I started getting ads for chocolate cake. I'm
See?
not even kidding. I'm
Yep.
not even kidding you. Okay. So how do we know that they're not customizing your experience, right? Which I'm pretty sure they are. And they're literally leading whoever they can lead. And I believe a lot of it is based in fear, making you afraid, so that when they offer you, I don't know what's at the end of their rainbow, but I'm sure it's got some bribery.
Yeah. No
And of course,
thanks.
the mark, obviously, which we already see the rollout of, and their economic system, which we see evidence of in the Book of Revelation. So we've already declined. What else you got? Nothing? Okay, we're gonna go back to getting our eggs. Now, is there anything else? No? Okay, we're done. We're all
Yeah.
done. They don't want it to be. That's the end of the conversation. But guess what? It is. It is because they're all of this tech ends right where the end of their extension cords for all their computers end.
Well, they also could precondition people to this GP chat. If you think about all the predictive text from your phone, if you're texting somebody, I don't know, with the iPhone, it'll already have words come up that you can just click on instead of typing it yourself. So you could technically
Yeah,
have a conversation using your predictive text. And people have been slowly conditioned to that, so they don't think it's that big of a deal.
crazy. That's nuts. What about
Yeah.
this? What about this thing that happened in East Palestine? Did you hear about that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so this one's really bad. I'm gonna put it up on the screen, guys. I don't know if you guys heard about this. This is in the United States, East Palestine, Ohio.
Oh, is this the
I
chemical
believe
spill
it
or the
is.
train derailment or something?
Yeah, this is the
Yes,
train
yes, yes.
derailment. Okay,
Wow.
so
There's
I'm gonna put it
animals
up on the
dying
screen.
now.
The mainstream media is being quiet about this. You're hearing almost next to nothing.
Yeah.
This is one of the worst disasters in U.S. history,
Wow.
folks. This is Chernobyl level stuff. The mainstream media spends an enormous amount of time lecturing us about fake environmental issues, but now that one of the greatest environmental catastrophes in U.S. history has occurred, they are being strangely quiet about it. What we are witnessing in East Palestine, Ohio, is so horrifying that it is truly difficult to put into words. One hazardous material specialist is claiming that authorities basically nuked a town with chemicals so we could get a railroad open.
Wow. That's wicked. I believe it.
Unfortunately, that's not an exaggeration at all. When they decided to conduct a controlled burn of vinyl chloride from some of the wrecked rail cars, they knew it would send phosgene and hydrogen chloride into the air.
Isn't phosgene what they use in like wartime? Like Agent
This
Orange?
is
Isn't that what that is?
this is deadly stuff.
Yeah, you can't do a control burn of chemicals. Or these people never take chemistry class. You do a controlled burn of crops, not chemicals, because fire will cause the elements to change.
So now look at the sky above Ohio. And folks, when the rain comes down, okay, all of that's coming down on crops, homes.
Yeah, I'd be so out of there.
There is no such thing as organic crops now. All of these people, and then they arrested this guy who was reporting it, by the way. I don't know if you saw that, but
wow.
So fish are dying.
That is so dangerous.
And this is right. I mean, we're talking about, look, Chernobyl level. Animals are dying, fish are dying. All right, and they're keeping quiet about it.
I'm looking here. I took some notes like a year ago. I don't even know why, but I have written down chloroform when exposed to oxygen converts to phosgene, which is a chemical weapon, which has a half-life of 180 days. So they just released a chemical weapon, literally.
That has a half-life of how long?
180 days. Wow.
They just so what you just said,
chloroform introduced to oxygen creates phosgene, and that's a chemical weapon. It's used in the time of warfare. I wrote that down on my phone like a year ago.
So that's a chemical attack.
That's exactly what that is. A chemical
That's no different than an enemy dropping a chemical bomb.
100%.
Right? On Ohio. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
That's a fair statement. Phosgene, so essentially, same result.
In the war, yeah.
You're going to see dramatic increase in cancer, yes? Or what does this do? What is the result of this? What happens physically to people who are exposed if they don't die from inhalation or whatever? What's going to happen to them?
What's not going to happen to them? I mean, this is like Chernobyl. This is diabolical.
This has to be carcinogenic, wouldn't you expect?
Yeah, it's a chemical weapon. It's phosgene. There's no other use for it other than as a chemical weapon.
Well, apparently it's a precursor to making PVC pipe is what it's used for. So once it's converted, it's harmless. But in the state that it was being transported in, obviously highly volatile, highly
explosive,
flammable, explosive. Yes. So somebody is saying it basically attacks the respiratory system, lung diseases, COPD, and so forth.
Right.
So all of these people who are downwind, which you kind of got to wonder about because you see this and it's just west of the tri-state area. You're talking about some of the most densely populated areas in the world.
Seeing stories of animals now that are just dropping dead in that area. I meant to send that to you before you went live. I saw that story. The animals in that area are winding up dead. So what's it going to do to people? The animals are just dropping dead in the atmosphere.
So if it's killing the animals, dropping them dead, the animals that survive the contamination have to drink the water, eat the grass, live outside. So what are the chances that livestock, be it chicken, beef, pork, whatever people are eating, are all now being contaminated all over this area.
Yeah,
And
I
what
would
is
be
that area
livid.
famous for? Isn't that famous for Amish? Yeah, look at
Somebody
it.
just
Somebody
said that.
said that.
Yeah, Amish
Yeah.
downwind.
Okay, so there's this is an interesting way if you were trying to negatively impact the food supply in a different way,
Right.
this
Where
might
those
not
more
be the worst
self-sufficient.
way to. Yeah, this
Right.
might be an effective technique.
Yeah.
If accidentally they may have done something to make this worse.
Well, just the fact that they said it was a controlled burn of a chemical. There's no such thing. If you just take chemistry class, you don't. A controlled burn of a chemical happens inside of a lab.
What are you
Not
trying to
outside.
say,
Yeah.
Octavia? They didn't follow the science? Are you, are you
That's
trying to
just
say
what.
they didn't follow the science here? These guys follow the science. Come on, Octavia.
Well, they
You
forgot
got to
what
follow the
science. This is
science.
chemistry. That's how it works.
Yeah, like prevailing wind. How
Yeah.
did you see that sky cover? That
Yeah,
dark
that's so
grayish
bad.
sky. That reminds me of the scripture, though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a day of what? Dark
Darkness.
clouds,
Mm-hmm.
doom,
Gloominess. Yeah.
gloominess. Right? And what about these diseases, the pestilences, right? So if this started to create that where people were sick but couldn't identify the source,
Yeah.
it may be a long, disastrous death, not a quick one.
Right.
This is the kind of stuff I think about. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, you might have just sentenced 10 million people to slow, horrific death.
Yeah.
And
That's
you're
what it is.
saying it has a half life of 180 days. So that means that all of that was spread out, now spread in all the clouds.
Yeah.
And don't tell me, I know we're being nice, aren't we, David? And don't tell me that they don't know a little something about spreading chemicals in clouds.
Right.
Okay. So what are they trying to do here?
Yeah.
What's the net result that this is going to produce? Whether it was oops, an accident or not, net result is going to be the same. You see a lot of people die.
I wouldn't eat that food
Net
coming out of
result.
that region.
That's my point.
Can't eat it.
That's my point. If you live anywhere in this area where the food is being supplied to your store from these farms, anything that is being affected by this weather that is going to come down on your crops or animals or people or whatever, this is just another way of mass affecting folks with plausible, deniable attacks.
Right.
Because, this story will disappear. It's not even in the news cycle for it to even disappear from the news cycle. It's not even in the news cycle.
Right.
So it doesn't even have to disappear because it never got there. It never came up.
I think they're trying to tell people it's safe to go back home, and there are people that are questioning that. Like, I don't know if we believe the official report. And I think those people are right to question that.
I think they are. I think you have good reason, folks, to question what is going on and where we are in reality. And folks, it's stuff like this that should make us really stop and pause when we see the United States is immediately urging its citizens to leave Russia. And while I, consider that to be, relatively standard considering the hostilities that have erupted, it is a foreboding.
Right.
The United States has told its citizens to leave Russia immediately due to the war in Ukraine and the risk of arbitrary arrest or harassment by Russian law enforcement agencies. U.S. citizens residing or traveling in Russia should depart immediately. The U.S. Embassy in Moscow said, exercise increased caution due to the risk of wrongful detentions and do not travel to Russia, it added. So I saw a story, kind of interesting side note, where the Russians were actually sending propaganda videos into the United States to affect the Patriot movement. Basically, I think to sort of say, hey, we're with you against these other bad guys.
Wow.
So kind of interesting information and going back and forth. And but what do you think about this immediate call for them to for all Americans to leave Russia? What's your thoughts?
So I find it interesting because, again, I think a lot of this is contrived. You've got this worldwide push to sort of stand behind Ukraine. Remember all the colors and the flags,
Yep.
and you've got this president who also doubles as an actor, traveling around to meet all these dignitaries.
No,
And
we have an actor who doubles as a president. Let's get this
yeah,
right.
right. Okay,
He's an
yeah,
actor
exactly.
first.
Right. My mistake. That's the thing. And so, I find it suspicious. I mean, I'm suspicious of everything the
Right.
government does, but I just find it very interesting. The timing is very interesting, particularly
Yes.
because you have a lot of the mainstream media that is now starting to pay attention to some of the dealings that were happening between certain people involved with the United States and Ukraine. Now you've got the
Right.
mainstream media no longer calling those things conspiracy theories, but actually speaking about it, like Hunter Biden. And so I find that interesting that that stuff is starting to spill over into mainstream media. And now, oh, we better get out of Russia. So I don't know. I find it all to be very contrived. I think it's just
Yeah, and, and it's all Russian disinformation.
right, exactly.
except, oops, give me back my laptop. But that's all
Yeah,
disinformation.
exactly.
But give me back my laptop.
Exactly.
This is so bad. It's so laughably bad that I'm not really sure kind of how to react to some of it. Just because it's like I just want to do one of
It's
these. Like,
unoriginal. I mean, you
oh,
look at it all happening, and you're like, of course they're going to try to do this, because they're just going to try to sweep it under the rug and just pretend. But you saw this whole push to sort of demonize Russia and sort of uphold Ukraine on this pedestal for the last year. And
right.
it's weird that now they're just like, oh, you better get out of Russia. Well, what do they know that we don't know?
Well, I think that they know that there's a lot more to come.
Yeah.
That this movie is far from over.
Right.
And I think that they like to play the game of, kind of the clean hands game of, hey, not us, or well, we warned you, and so we've all seen that where there's warnings in movies and different things. Speaking of warnings, watch this. Did you see this video where they purported this was in the sky before the Turkey earthquake? Check this out. Let me put it up on the screen. This is interesting. So this came out. I got this report that this was in the sky before the Turkey earthquake.
Huh.
Like immediately before.
That's what it looks like when Elon Musk, shoots off some of his little.
Well, that's kind of what I thought, because that's
exactly
what
like
they
that.
told us the last time
Yeah.
we saw one of these. We were all told, "Oh, that's a
Elon Musk Starlink.
That was a
Yeah.
SpaceX, or yeah, right." They told us that. Well,
Yeah.
now what was this SpaceX too? Because
it looks just like it, right?
looks a lot like this SpaceX, but here this happens just before
Wow.
that earthquake. And I mean, this you're watching these cars go by, so you're seeing this is being videotaped. It's not a flash in one moment. This was, this took a while to traverse the sky. So I don't think it's too unreasonable to think that that there may be the possibility that there were weapons used. What do you think about that?
Well, you mentioned controlled demolition earlier, and my dad and I talk about this stuff all the time. Not to be one of those people, but there was that massive controlled demolition in the United States in 2001 when you saw two large buildings fall directly into their footprint.
And that's what we saw with some of these buildings over there too.
I was just about to say that these buildings fell right into their footprint, which that's not typically how buildings are going to fall over unless they're being there's a controlled demolition or explosives that are being used. Buildings
don't think they
just
actually
fall right down
that.
into their footprint. They'll either going to collapse, they're going to crumble, they'll fall in one direction or the next, but to go right into its footprint, that only happens if you talk to any structural engineer. My father is an engineer, and he'll tell you any building that's going to fall in its footprint is because of some sort of demolition.
So
controlled.
Do you know what the implications of what you just suggested are?
I mean, we saw it happen in the United States, 2001. They tell you that planes crash into a building, but they fell right in their footprint. So explain
Yeah,
that.
we know that had to be a controlled demolition.
Sure,
we know that for a fact. Let's see if I can get one of Yeah. Oh no, you're definitely batting 1,000 with. No, that's why I sent you the link. I'm like, no, let me get Octavia on there, man. We're
And this is what kind of conversations my dad and I have all day.
this is the stuff we talk about. Oh, here, hey, here. This is here we go. I'm gonna put this on the screen. Hang on a second. This is one that, and this is horrific footage, folks. And
But
you
it
see
falls
these
straight
buildings.
down.
Look at these buildings, and they're in their original. I mean, that's right in its footprint right
Yeah.
there. There's several of these buildings that fell straight down. Many of these weren't even that tall. Oh, look at that
Right.
one. That's a fairly tall
Man,
structure.
I
Let's
mean,
go
you just
back
have to
to it
look at
again one
like
more
when they
time.
demoed like casinos and stuff, and watch what happens when you've seen an actual controlled demolition, and then watch
Yeah, like right
it.
here, this fell that did not go either direction. The
It
streets
just
are
went
even clear.
straight down.
Went
Exactly.
straight down.
Yeah.
And I mean, in this audio, all you hear is people screaming. Just the realization that there are people underneath all this rubble.
Horrifying.
It's just what a horrible, horrible way to pass from this earth, to be crushed. And I know that there was quite a few people that, obviously we saw the numbers in the beginning, but also they're now dealing with the aftermath of that and the millions that are now homeless. And again, they have a winter just like, other parts of the world. So they're homeless in the winter by the millions, which gives us all a perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that it's something that we all have to be very sober about.
It makes me so grateful, and I just praise Yahuwah that He sees fit to give us another day to live and a quiet and safe place to be, because we know it says the slain of Yahuwah will be many, and it doesn't say how. And so I think we're seeing how, and it's very
I
eye
think
opening.
I think you're absolutely right. We're seeing His grace manifested upon the earth in the way that He's preserving the remnant. I'm so grateful for every one of you who are part of this house, who stand in support and continue to help us to preach the gospel of the kingdom. And I do believe our adversary is running scared and running away, knowing that his time is very short. Those that are inhabitants of the earth and the sea, if you will, are finding that the devil has come down with great wrath, knowing that he hath but a short time. But those of you that are abiding in the heavens, those of you that are abiding in the Ruach, taking your seat in heavenly places, far above every principality and power, you need to continue to abide in Him in all things. This is why I continue to encourage and admonish you, all of you, um, to seek first the kingdom and
Amen.
to not hold anything too closely. Look, even beloved Bethlehem, Mashiach, Mary and Joseph had to get up and leave beloved Bethlehem because danger was coming there. So it may not be that the place itself is a bad place. It just may be a bad time to be there.
Right. Good point.
That's It's just not the time to be at that spot. And now we're seeing more evidence of the upcoming cleanse in Israel. I believe the backlash you're seeing in Israel is against the forces, if you will, that are doing the machinations behind the scenes. So I expect we're going to see some additional conflagrations in that region. I saw a report, I didn't put it up here, but I saw a report that Saudi Arabia is now in negotiations with Russia. That is not a good sign for the West.
Right.
If you're rooting for the West to win this football game, they're down a few touchdowns. It's not looking good, which does fulfill the prophecies in Daniel. Maybe we'll talk about that on our midweek conversation. So, but yeah, crazy stuff that continues to manifest throughout our earth. So you're saying you weren't getting any eggs?
So we we have quail and they're supposed to be laying and they're not laying. We just butchered all of our roosters yesterday. Our chickens are not quite at egg laying age. They'll be there in a couple of weeks, but we did find feed that is not from any of these big box places, and it's mostly black soldier fly larvae, which they like to eat anyway, and that's really high in protein. So it'll be interesting to see. We're not sure if the quail aren't laying because of the feed they were getting, because the farm we normally purchase from, they've been out of the quail feed for the season. So we've been buying just from the store, but we did butcher a bunch of roosters, and that might be less stress on the hens now that all the roosters are gone.
Well,
So
now
we'll
you're going to
see.
have to come back and give us an update because we're going to want to know how that um, turns out. So
Yeah,
as
I
we
think the
close out
chicken
for the
feed
night,
should do well. Hopefully, I think so.
yes, well, that's my hope. So I want to
Yeah,
hear an update on that report. Those of you
definitely.
that grow quail out there, maybe shoot us a comment below the video and help us with any insights and tips. We've got to share all these insights and
Amen.
hacks in agricultural hacks, livestock hacks, cooking, preserving, preserves. You know, all of you ladies who were taught how to preserve food, boy, oh boy, are you ever a hot commodity these days, huh?
Right.
And so grateful for every one of you. And I think we all have to learn new skills in the days to come. So nobody can say, nobody gets to say, I don't know how to do that. Yeah, well, that's the theme song going forward.
None of us did. YouTube has taught us. I mean, we are now cattle
I
ranchers. We've
just
never
said
done
that.
that.
I
Never
just
done it
said that to
before.
Mindy. I said, 20 minutes in a YouTube video. We'll know how to do it.
That's so true. I mean, my husband and I a year ago lived in the suburbs, and now we have cattle on the property. We had to learn just watching Greg Judy and Joel Salatin on YouTube. We're like, all right, they seem to think that people can do it. Let's do it. So they're still alive. So
Amen.
praise Yahuwah.
Amen. Shalom to all of you out there. Thank you all for joining us this evening. It's been a fun time. Thank you so much, Octavia, for
Thanks for
sitting with us
inviting.
this evening. It's been a pleasure having you. Always a joy when we get a chance to sit down and talk. And I apologize to you. I missed your live stream. I got back, sat down in front of the computer, and I usually get your thing all set up and have my little tea, and I'm good to go. Well, I was out like a light.
That's okay. I
I
witnessed it
woke up
again.
and you were all done, and I just felt so bad. So I'm glad you were able to jump on and join us today, so that I could catch up with you.
Awesome. Praise Yahuwah. Thanks for inviting.
Thank you so
Always a
much for
pleasure.
coming on. And folks, we are always grateful for every one of you that are part of this house and for those of you that make these broadcasts possible with your support, with your prayer, and with your love. And we couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much for continuing this journey with us. We are very grateful. Go on over to remnanthouse.org and you'll certainly find lots of information there that I'm sure will bless you. And we certainly would appreciate your support in this hour. It's been tough. It's been a tight time period, and we're grateful for every single one of you. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us for this time. Share the link. Make sure you like and subscribe. May Elohim bless each and every one of you, and we'll see you again next time. Shalom.